It had been almost 30 years since the Jerusalem congregation was established, and those brothers and sisters faced some real challenges. They were getting constant opposition from the religious leaders. They'd endured severe financial hardship, and in just a few years, they would have to flee their homes when the Roman armies attacked their city. The Apostle Paul wanted to encourage those Christians not to allow the difficulties they faced to distract them from their spiritual focus. So he wrote them a letter, which is now known as the book of Hebrews. If you would turn there with me, let's look at a recommendation Paul made to that congregation to help them. It's in Hebrews chapter 6. In verse 1, he's encouraging them to press on to maturity. In verse 11, to be industrious. And then verse 12, so that you may not become sluggish, but be imitators of those who, through faith and patience, inherit the promises. Well, as we know, this letter was not written only for the Jerusalem congregation. It was inspired by God and included in the Bible for our instruction, because like that congregation, we face real challenges. But also, like that congregation, we can benefit by being imitators of those who exercised faith in the past. And that's what we're going to discuss during this symposium. Now, the first example we'll be looking at is that of Isaac and Rebekah. How did they exercise faith when making family decisions? Next, we'll consider the beautiful example of Esther. How did she demonstrate her faith in the face of opposition? And then finally, we'll discuss Timothy's example of exercising faith when encountering temptations. So let's take a look at the example of faith set by Isaac and Rebekah. In fact, we'll consider several different situations they faced over the course of their lives. The first one happened before they even met. You remember the account in Genesis chapter 24. Isaac was 40 years old and he was unmarried. And that would be fine under normal circumstances, but these were not normal circumstances. Jehovah had promised that a great and mighty nation would come through Isaac, so he had to get married. But there were no servants of Jehovah anywhere near where they lived. They were 500 miles from their homeland, and Isaac couldn't go back there. Jehovah had said that he was going to give them this land as their inheritance. So what would they do? Isaac's father, Abraham, sent his servant, probably Eliezer, all the way back to Haran to find a woman, a spiritual person, a servant of Jehovah, who would be willing to come back with him and become Isaac's wife. That was the plan. Now, was that how Isaac would have preferred to meet his wife, never having seen her before, and marrying whoever Eliezer brought back with him? Maybe not. But he accepted his father's arrangement because it ensured that he would marry a servant of Jehovah. And that was the most important thing. If you notice there in Genesis 24 and verse 3, Abraham said to his servant, "And I will make you swear by Jehovah, the God of the heavens and the God of the earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites." No, she had to be a servant of Jehovah. And Isaac accepted that. And what about on Rebekah's side? Well, as the account goes on to explain, it was clear that Jehovah was directing matters. Rebekah was the one. But when Abraham's servant spoke to Rebekah's household, he didn't just say, well, you have to do this. It's obvious that it's Jehovah's direction. No, interestingly, in verse 39 of that same chapter, he told them the whole story. He said, "I said to my master, what if the woman is unwilling to come with me?" Which, given what he was asking, seems like a real possibility. And then in verse 41, he told them that Abraham had said that you will be released from your oath to me if you go to my family and they will not give her to you. So Rebekah was not under compulsion to go with him, but it was clear that Jehovah was guiding matters, and Rebekah could see that. It was undeniable. So when they asked Rebekah in verse 58, "Will you go with this man?" how did she respond? In Hebrew, it's just one word. It means, "I am willing to go." See, to Rebekah, if it was from Jehovah, then the answer was yes. That's all she needed to know. Now, would that have been her preference, to marry someone she had never met and to be introduced to him for the first time as soon as she got down off a camel that she had been traveling on for maybe 3 weeks? Maybe not. But this spiritual woman was most interested in doing Jehovah's will. Well, it's no surprise that these two spiritual people, when they got together, continued to exercise faith throughout the course of their marriage. Life was not always easy. For 20 years, they were unable to have a child, which was a concern. What about Jehovah's promise? In Genesis 25 and verse 21, it shows that Isaac didn't take Jehovah's word lightly. No, it says there that Isaac kept pleading with Jehovah regarding his wife. He had faith that what Jehovah said was going to happen, and he continued to make it a matter of prayer for all those years. And when it finally did happen, the pregnancy was a difficult one, and it was stressful to Rebekah. How did she handle that? At the end of verse 22 of that same chapter, it says that she inquired of Jehovah. So this couple knew where to turn when they faced challenges. They had faith in their God. Chapter 26 relates that years later there was a famine. But in verse 2, Jehovah told Isaac, "Do not go down to Egypt." Now, Isaac didn't say, "But that's where the food is." No, he had faith in Jehovah's word. And Isaac and Rebekah demonstrated that faith by their obedience to that word. Maybe the most difficult test for this couple involved their son Esau, who, as it turned out, did not share their appreciation for spiritual things. In fact, the Bible says that his choices were a source of great grief for Isaac and Rebekah. Our publications have described Rebekah's feelings as unbearable anguish. But even through the really bad times, Isaac and Rebekah maintained their faith. Their relationship with Jehovah sustained them throughout their whole lives, and Jehovah blessed them for that faith, even in material ways. Interestingly, just after the account of that famine in Genesis 26 and verse 2, verses 12 and 13 said that Jehovah blessed Isaac abundantly. In fact, he's one of the handful of people in the Bible who were described as not just wealthy, but very wealthy. No famine can prevent Jehovah's blessing, and neither can any other challenge. How can we imitate the beautiful examples of Isaac and Rebekah? Well, we might think of somewhat similar situations in our modern day. For example, what about the matter of choosing a marriage mate? 1 Corinthians 7, verse 39, indicates that for a Christian, they should only consider marriage to someone who is in the Lord. It's the same position as Abraham took on this matter all those years ago. It has to be a servant of Jehovah. Now, you might be in a similar situation as was Isaac, not seeing that there is a suitable mate in your area. And that can be really distressing for a person who would very much like to be married. It takes faith to be obedient to Jehovah in this area, to know that you belong to Jehovah and that he will not fail to support you, including emotionally. If you are being patient and selective in choosing a mate out of obedience to Jehovah's direction, think of how pleased he must be to see that your loyalty to him is more important to you than your personal feelings. You are an imitator of those who, through faith and patience, inherit the promises. What about for married couples? How can we imitate Isaac and Rebekah's example of faith? Well, let's look together at an interesting scriptural principle in the book of Ecclesiastes. And notice in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 what it says a good relationship can do. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, and starting with verse 11, we'll read the first two sentences. It says there, "Moreover, if two lie down together, they will stay warm. But how can just one keep warm? And someone may overpower one alone, but two together can take a stand against him." So this scripture acknowledges that there are certain challenges that can be overcome by two people being together on an issue. And when a married couple has a good relationship, they've found that to be true. But just as was the case with Isaac and Rebekah, there are plenty of challenges and disappointments in this system that are bigger than any two people can handle. As we already discussed, having a good relationship didn't give Isaac and Rebekah a child. It didn't stop the famine that they had to go through. And it didn't make their son Esau a spiritual person. No, to be successful, we need more than just for two people to be together. That last sentence in verse 12 says, "And a threefold cord cannot quickly be torn apart." That's the key. Married couples exercise faith by maintaining a threefold cord, looking to Jehovah for direction when they experience challenges or disappointments. Life in this system is not always easy, as we all know. But if you refuse to allow difficulties to disrupt your marriage, if you continue to rely on Jehovah during the hard times, then you are an imitator of those who through faith and patience inherit the promises. For some parents, the most difficult test they've faced is the same as what Isaac and Rebekah faced, when a child chooses not to serve Jehovah. Now, they know what Galatians chapter 6 and verse 5 says, that each one will carry his own load. But this is their child who they love, and the feelings can be almost overwhelming. How can a person cope with the intense feelings that such a circumstance might bring? Well, like Isaac and Rebekah, remain close to Jehovah. Do not allow someone else's course, even one who is dearly loved, to distance you from Jehovah. Isaac and Rebekah had feelings at times of unbearable anguish, but they looked to Jehovah for strength. They kept their spiritual routine, and Jehovah rewarded their faith. He will do no less for you. If you continue to trust in your God, if you continue to serve Him faithfully, even sometimes through tears, then you are an imitator of those who through faith and patience inherit the promises. Is this really possible? With all the problems we face in modern times, can a person really live this kind of a life of faith? Well, consider just a few comments from modern day examples. One married couple who has served Jehovah for decades, in fact, Steve, the husband, has been baptized for 62 years. They've experienced quite a variety of challenges. One especially difficult trial was when their daughter, their only child, nearly died while she herself was giving birth. It was a traumatic experience. How have they maintained their stability during such difficult times? They say that they remember Romans 8:38 and 39, that no matter how bad things become, Jehovah never separates from us. Never. One thing they're doing now is keeping a notebook of things that have helped our brothers and sisters in Russia to remain strong during their trials. And they say, despite all the challenges of life, we have never felt alone. Rick and Renee have been in the full-time service for nearly 40 years together, including over 20 years in the circuit work. But then Renee's parents got sick. And as Rick says, overnight we went from the traveling work to being caregivers, all during a time in life when we were having our own health problems. How did they maintain their spiritual stability? Renee says, we prayed to Jehovah for help to adjust our sails and stay on course spiritually. She says, Jehovah answered our prayers not just for strength, but for joy. My faith was strengthened as we felt Jehovah carry our family through difficult times. And Rick says that they have personally experienced what 2 Chronicles 16 verse 9 says, that Jehovah has been looking for opportunities to support them. Noel and Linda have served Jehovah together for the last 45 of their 50 years of marriage. They've faced challenges, but when one of their children chose not to serve Jehovah, they said it was a very difficult situation to deal with emotionally, the most difficult they've faced. Has Jehovah blessed them for their loyalty to him and their faith? They say, he has blessed our family in so many ways. They and their 2 children who are serving Jehovah, who they say are their greatest blessing, have received many privileges of service over the years. And Noel's and Linda's faith remains strong. They say, we are confident that Jehovah will always do the right thing. Did you notice the common theme here? The challenges were different for each one, but the solution was the same. It's the same as it was for Isaac and Rebekah. They all looked to Jehovah for support and direction. That's what kept them going. And that's no surprise. After all, Jehovah is the originator of the family. He knows what will make us happy. Inheriting the promises he's given us requires faith and patience. If we have the faith that it's going to happen, then all we really need is the patience to wait until it does. If we exercise such faith in Jehovah by applying his wise counsel on family life, like Isaac and Rebekah, we can be sure of reaping his rich blessings. But there are other lessons to be learned from those who exercised faith in the past. Please give your careful attention to Brother Arthur Iannone as he considers with us Part 2, Imitate Those Who Exercise Faith, Esther.